David Lynch's Lost Highway. I just picked up the Criterion Collection 4K, and today we're going to take a look at that scan and compare it to the original DVD scan. Let's get into it. So I have all of David Lynch's feature-length films on DVD, and recently I started upgrading them to 4K. I did a Mulholland Drive comparison video, and this week we're doing Lost Highway. One of my favorite David Lynch films, one I think that is highly underrated, but recently I think people have come around on. Now I think it's had its fans all along, but I love these beautiful Criterion packages, these new style ones they're doing. To be honest, I haven't bought a Criterion DVD in I don't know how long. I definitely have a few of the Wes Anderson Blu-rays they did. I have Fear and Loathing on Blu-ray. I have a couple in the collection, you know. I bought this DVD a few years ago, I want to say when I was living in Arizona, probably at one of the record stores around there. What were they called? Zia Records? And my entire life, I've been a Bill Pullman fan. I saw him at Spaceballs growing up, Independence Day. That was the first time I watched this movie, was when I bought this DVD. And this thing has been through some use over the years. What's crazy about this DVD is it didn't release till 2008. This movie only had a VHS release until 2008. Blu-ray was out at that point. It didn't get a Blu-ray release until 2019 when Kino Lorber put it out. And if you're a big David Lynch fan, you probably know that that was made from old elements, the same used for the DVD. There was no restoration from the negative. And David Lynch himself was tweeting about this and was very unhappy about it. Kino Lorber was firing back. It was a whole thing. But now we have the director-approved 4K scan, which actually has some great special features. If we read right off the back, it is a new 4K digital restoration supervised and approved by director David Lynch with new 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack and alternate uncompressed stereo soundtrack. It includes the 4K disc by itself and a Blu-ray with the film and the special features, which are Pretty as a Picture, The Art of David Lynch, a feature-length 1997 documentary by Toby Keeler featuring Lynch and his collaborators Angelo Badalamenti, Peter Deming, Barry Gifford, Mary Sweeney, and others, along with on-set footage from Lost Highway. Reading by Lynch and critic Christine McKenna of excerpts from their book Room to Dream. Archival interviews with Lynch and actors Patricia Arquette, Bill Pullman, and Robert Loggia. English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, plus excerpts from an interview with Lynch from filmmaker and writer Chris Rodley's book Lynch on Lynch, which is included here. There was a little booklet with Mulholland Drive also that had excerpts from the same interview, and I've read through both of them because they're just fucking fascinating. David Lynch, I love that he just doesn't take himself too seriously, you know. He has his moments where he's completely serious, but the guy was hilarious too. So let's take a look at these side-by-sides. I did two different styles that we'll kind of take a look at and see what these scans look like. Now here we are looking at the side-by-side comparison. You might be wondering, why am I only looking at two? Well, first of all, I don't have the VHS of Lost Highway, and I didn't feel like tracking it down for just this video. So on the left, you will see the DVD. On the right, you will see the 4K. The reason I didn't include the Blu-ray is because I only have the Blu-ray that came with the 4K that uses the same scan. At least I assume it uses the same scan because their 4K and Blu-ray were released at the same time, and I compared them frame by frame because I did record the Blu-ray like I was going to compare them, but there was like no difference between it and the 4K, so if it was just format. So anyway, upon first glance, you'll notice there's a color difference. There are going to be some wild color differences in this. This is important because this original DVD that you're seeing on the left was what Kino Lorber used for their Blu-ray, or at least the same sources. So you can assume that color-wise it's going to look pretty close to that. Again, I didn't want to search out that one just to do this comparison because David Lynch didn't approve it, and he approved the 4K, so as far as I'm concerned, the 4K is the way the movie should look. Again, actually, both beautiful, honestly. I found this to be a very interesting shot to compare, just because of how light it is, how the grays are on the street. I could see somebody arguing the grass looks better on the DVD, but the street looks better on the 4K, if that makes sense. And before we get too deep into this, I do want to remind you that you might be viewing this on a phone, and even if you're viewing it on your TV, I didn't upload it in 4K. The movie's definitely going to look better on a 4K TV. We don't have the same TV. We probably don't have the same 4K player, so just keeping all that into consideration. As we look through this, I really do just appreciate how good the movie looks regardless. Like, the DVD doesn't look bad most of the time, you know what I mean? And these sort of subtle differences are way more subtle when you're not looking at it side by side like this. Now here, there's a few instances like this that I will point out to you guys that seems like something has been done. These are different versions, somehow, of the film, ever so slightly different. Now watch, what I mean by this is, look where he's standing in the window, right? These are synced up about as close as they can get, frame by frame. I'm going frame by frame forward right now, I'm clicking, you see him moving in the window. However, the 4K is fading out already. Much earlier. You see that? See how dark it is getting? But he's in the same spot. So frame-wise, it's the correct frame, but it's getting darker much earlier. Then the DVD actually drops out before the 4K. It's like the fade was extended on the 4K, and it's much quicker on the DVD. It's subtle differences like that that you notice on side-by-sides like this. And of course, Patricia Arquette, again, you know, just the skin tone differences is interesting enough. His gray jacket almost looks green in the saturation of the DVD. Now, look at this shot. Are you inclined, like me, to be like, man, I really do love the overblown, just saturated, beautiful look of the Luna Lounge logo over there in the DVD, but the 4K actually, it does give you more in that logo, just less color. Fascinating. So this scene in particular, you'll notice as I'm flashing between these, like look at that wild color difference. The DVD is actually looking more like how the 4K was looking before. It's sort of like they've switched palettes here. And there's a great shot. This is one of my favorite things to look at when you do these types of videos. Lighting and fire, right? Look how overblown the light is on that DVD, and look how it looks on the 4K. It's so much softer. It's less abrupt, the transition there. I don't know if it's necessarily better, but again, look at just how different that color is. How much more color is actually in the 4K. I would say I like the color palette that's in the DVD better, just because I like cooler colors better than warmer and yellower, but it kind of fades across the screen on the 4K. You see what I mean? Like, there's just more depth there. Again, it's so interesting how different that color looks. And look at these. This was another thing I noticed. These particular shots at the end of this scene. Look how blown out he is on the 4K, at least in comparison to the DVD. Now, if this is something that was on the original film, and it's supposed to be this way, I'm all for it. I do find this fascinating, though. And this is the other scene where I was talking about where the fade changes. So as we're watching here, look, I'm going frame by frame, we're in slow-mo. He stops, and he's doing this, and look at that 4K, it's faded out to white entirely already. And they kind of fade back in around the same time, but look at his motions. He's in relatively the same spot, but the fading is completely different. Again, we're going in reverse now, checking it out, and look at that. I mean, you know, through no fault of my own, it's a little off time, of course, but it's just crazy. And there's people going to watch this and say, who cares? Who cares? It's not even noticeable. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's interesting to me. These shots as well, just, man, those are fascinating. Because on the one hand, you do like just how red he looks in the DVD, but the contrast levels are completely different almost. But the contrast levels look wildly different between these two, and I gotta say I'm inclined to like the 4K better. Now, this is one of my favorite scenes in any movie. This is comparable to the Mulholland Drive diner scene for me. I love it. And these ones are pretty comparable. Let's look at that. Not too bad, right? Nothing to say here, really, because they both look fine to me. Other than that, I just love this scene and love this character and this movie. in his cell phone. Look how it's... Do you remember those? Like the cell phones and their little leather wraps that they used to be in? Fucking hilarious. So again, look how similar those skin tones look. And then look at this scene. Look how wildly different that is. Now the left one is the DVD, right? Seems more grounded in sort of reality. And the right, the 4K, seems like it's a colder room. It's trying to give you a different vibe. And this is funny because I always knew that they shot some of Lost Highway at the Ghostbusters firehouse, and it's the jail scenes. That's the staircase that the Ghostbusters walk up and everything there, that the fire poles in and everything. This is the LA firehouse where they shot the interiors for that movie. This shot, this is a fascinating shot in the movie with the white picket fence and everything. Obviously, makes me think of Blue Velvet, but I watched this movie for the first time living in Arizona too, and all the houses in Arizona mostly have these big style fences like this that are brick and whatnot. Cinder blocks, whatever. I will say though, when you put them side by side, just the little bit of color that the DVD has that the 4K doesn't in this scene, it adds to it, but it's some of those sunlit shots that are a little overexposed right here. Like, for example, looking at those bricks right by his face, it's way more washed out, Even this, that's such a just great noir-like style shot. It's beautiful. David Lynch knew what he was doing, man. For real. Although I do gotta say, I like the skin tone on the 4K better. It fits. This whole element of the movie always reminded me of the, James and Evelyn subplot in Twin Peaks Season 2. I think it's my least favorite subplot of that movie, but executed a little better in this movie. Look at that. One of my favorite shots in this movie. And either one of them I do love. They both look great. But this is what I meant with fire and lights. Look how much more you can see of the actual detail when stuff is really hot and really bright on the 4K versus the DVD. Right there, even alone. Again, a little bit more similar looking here. Not too many color differences, although I do say I prefer the 4K again. Robert Loggia. Look at the color differences here. See, now here I'd say I prefer the DVD for sure. But that's just because I think I prefer the way that color palette looks. This is a little yellow looking, at least in comparison now. Holy crap. Let's look at this frame by frame because I've never done this. Wow, look at that fucking bullet hit his head. Holy shit. That's fucking crazy, man.
That's fucking crazy, man.
And then he falls backwards. No, that's awesome. That is so crazy looking, man. I am so glad I did this. Let me know which version you guys liked better in the comments down below. And if you like this video, be sure to check out this one and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.